प्रवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Unbelievable. In this book, there are 44 pages of printed pages of summary of our previous retreat, which is most amazing. That's a lot of work. Very good. So anybody has any question? Maybe the one who is holding the microphone should start, I guess.
The lucky one. So, Swamiji, can you explain the difference between the basic cognitive person and the Paramatma, the knower?
Basic cognitive person?
And the knower.
Well, generally, basic cognitive person himself is called knower. Pramata means knower. Unless by the word knower you mean special kind of knowledge. But otherwise, we perceive through our organs of perception, we know the objects of the world, and that involves any kind of knowledge or experience involves three factors: the knower, known, and knowing. So when I'm looking at you right now, I'm perceiving you through the organ of seeing. So you are the object of sight, object of knowledge. I am the knower. And when there is the contact between the two, the knowing takes place. Not only contact between knower and known, but I have these eyes which are the means of perception. So this means of perception called pramanam. The known is called prameya. Known is called pramata. So pramata the knower, prameya the known, pramana the means of knowledge. And what takes place is called pramiti, or the knowledge. And therefore, the one who knows the object of knowledge through the means of knowledge is called pramata. He is a cognitive person. Unless you want to use the word pramata for knowing the self, But pramata is a general term. Prama means the knowledge. Pramata, the one who knows. The same pramata becomes enlightened pramata, you can say. So we are all pramatas, being knowers. But then, what kind of knowledge takes place depends upon the state of the pramata. The knowledge will take place whenever a pramanam, means of knowledge, prameya, object of knowledge, when there is a contact between them, the pramiti takes place. However, how I interpret that knowledge becomes important. So it's called prati. The prati means perception remains the same for a wise person and other people also. But how we understand what we know or what we experience. My conclusion is that I am an individual knower. Everybody outside the boundary of the body are all different from me and I am different from them. They are objects of knowledge. And thus I become the knower. So, in the words of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Anyat Anyam Pashyati, one sees something different from himself. Yatra Nanyat Pashyati, Nanyat Shrunoti, Nanyat Vijanati, Satsang Yatat Bhuma, Sabhuma. Yatra Nanyat Pashyati, where one does not see the other. Nanyat Shrunoti, when one does not hear the other. Nanyat Vijanati, when one does not know the other. What do you mean? What the wise person is saying, he does not see the other, he does not hear the other, does not know the other. So then what happens to the wise person? Does the other disappear from his perception? Is that there is no object of perception? Is that why the wise person does not see the other? Whereas the ignorant sees the other, hears the other, knows the other. Tadalpam, that is ignorance. So seeing, hearing, knowing takes place for an ignorant person, the wise person also. Only that the wise person knows his true self. In perception of the wise person now, the self is no more confined to this body or mind or sense complex. He knows the self as consciousness, which is self of all. In that case now, when I see you, one interpretation is that I am the seer, you are the object of seeing, different from me. But when I truly know myself, I realize that the self that I am is self that you are. So that even when I see you, the idea of my seeing someone else does not come. Seeing is there, all right. But that you are different from me, I am different from you. That I am the seer, you are the seen, that kind of duality does not remain in the wake of the knowledge of the true nature of the self. So Pashyati, he sees all right, but in the perception the other is not there, because the other is only a product of ignorance. What Vedanta teaches is that eyes perceive all right, because as long as eyes are there, I will see, ears are there, I will hear. The organs of perception are the same for you and I and for the wise person also. But what is the interpretation? A bird, sometimes I see a bird, in the mirror it is pecking at the mirror. It sees another bird as though, and perhaps is fighting with it or making friends with it, I don't know. When a child also sometimes sees in the mirror and thinks that this is my friend, or he either starts crying or he starts praying. So when the child does not know that what I am looking at is my own self, the bird does not know that what I am confronting is my own self, then the response is of one kind. Either you like it, don't like it, and the raga dveshas will be there, and that's how the interaction will be. We are all wise people, at least as far as the reflection is concerned. So when we see the reflection in the mirror, we recognize that this is my own self. So even though I see, the idea that I am seeing someone other than me, that idea does not come to my mind. Because I recognize the reflection as nothing but myself. So there also there is a difference between ignorant and the wise. Who is ignorant? One who thinks that what appears in mirror is different from me. For the wise person, one who knows that what appears in mirror is myself. So whereas we all think that all of you are different from me, I am different from you, that is our perception all takes place, and that's the resultant is I like it, dislike it, happy, unhappy, that's the result. If I think that I'm perceiving something nice, then I'm happy. If I feel I'm perceiving something unpleasant, I'm unhappy. But when I know that I'm perceiving myself, the reaction of happiness or unhappiness no more remain. So that's the ultimately that is the Pramata who really knows what is. So we are all called Pramata, all right. But here, when I'm looking at you, what is my conclusion? I am the seer, you are the seen, and I am different from you. A wise person sees that difference, that idea does not arise in his mind, just as when you look at the mirror, the idea of the separatedness does not arise because we know. Similarly also, for the wise person, idea of the other does not arise. Seeing is all right, you follow? When Upanishad says it does not see the other, somebody says he doesn't see at all. No, he sees. Or maybe he is seeing his change, but that otherness is. No, he sees what we see. Except that he has the right recognition of what is. That I am only seeing myself. In that costume, in this costume, in various costumes. So what separates from you, from me, is that that costume is one, this costume is other. The one functioning through all the costumes is one. That's what Vedanta teaches. This is the core teaching of Vedanta, our scriptures. And when that knowledge takes place, as I said, then there are no reactions of sorrow or elation. What there is tranquility, calmness, happiness. we would call him true pramata, who sees things as they are. But pramata means one who perceives. The knower is called pramata.
That's where in some of the guided meditations we appealed to this basic cognitive person. So it wasn't clear to me if that is referring to the pramata or the one in which the pramata becomes an object.
No, pramata is basic cognitive person. And the transformation will take place in pramata.
Pranamji, Swamiji, we had a great opportunity and we are blessed to see you here and an opportunity to listen to the Upadeshasaram part 1 and part 2. And in midst of the COVID times and difficult times, we are all blessed.
But then you're all here, that's also important, you know. Not only I am here, but you are here. Equally, yeah.
My question is the extension of the discussion that knower, knowing and known. In the Vedic terms, when we call this as a Rishi, Devata and Chandas, and in the modern terms we call mantra, tantra and yantra. The reason I'm asking these questions, Swamiji, is that there is a lot of confusion between the three greatest philosophies of Advaita, Visishta Advaita and Dvaita. Is it possible that all the Vedanta, the Samhita, being all the knower, known and knowing, or the Rishi, Devata and Chandas being together is called Samhita? That's what we are hearing from Vedantic point of view. All these philosophies, don't we think it's confusing, and then all these three different philosophies are suited for a different maturity? In the modern time, my children or my grandchildren, in order to understand the essence of this basic thing, that is the greatest philosophy, that is what is your advice? How do we, the parents or the teachers, current teachers, should convey this Advaita philosophy in the day-to-day terminology, in day-to-day practical way? Thank you.
His question is a technical question. Many of you would know, and some of you may not know, that in India itself, Upanishads are called Vedanta. The Vedas have two sections. One is the section dealing with karma, it's called Karma Kanda. The last section is called the Jnana Kanda. The section dealing with knowledge are called Upanishad, also called Vedanta. So Vedanta means Upanishad, collection of all the Upanishads. Upanishad is the source book for the knowledge. What has happened is that these Upanishads have been interpreted somewhat differently by different acharyas. And they were great people, not ordinary people. The most ancient acharya is Bhagavan Shankaracharya. And he explained Upanishads in the way that we just discussed, as to how what is oneself, manifesting in different costumes, different names and forms. All there is just oneself, one consciousness. This is called Advaita or non-duality. Non-duality, that there is no duality. What's the duality? The knower, the known, knowing, when these are thought to be different from each other, then that's what they call division. That what you are is not what I am. It's called division. Or in sense called Bheda. Or what you call duality. Duality is not true. It is division. Bheda. Mutual exclusion. You exclude me, I exclude you. So, Bhagavan Shankaracharya ji taught us that even though we think that we are experiencing duality, when we really look into who is the person who calls himself the Pramata, the seer or the knower? What's the nature of one that is known? If we pay attention and explore this, tatah padam tat parimargitavyam, Lord Krishna says, then we should investigate or inquire into that padam or that reality. So vijignyasitavya, sanveshtavya, vijignyasitavya, he must be investigated, inquired into, should be known. And for knowing the self, Upanishad says, shrutavya, mantavya, nididhyasitavya, shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam. So that's how Upanishad, in fact, gives us this vision of what is the true nature of myself. When I know myself correctly, I will know everything else also correctly. When I know myself wrongly, my interpretation, everything else also is wrong. So says, what you are, that's what Bhashyakara explained. Subsequently, other acharyas came. Next came Ramanujacharya ji, very great also. But he did not agree with this vision of non-duality. He called it Vishishta Advaita, qualified non-duality. Not non-duality in primary sense, qualified. So we'll be seeing all this in Upanishadam also, but just to give you the idea, the Advaita Vedanta teaches that Jivatma is not different from Ishvara, the Paramatma. Whereas Ramanujacharya says that this Jivatma is a part of Paramatma. Your conscious, Bhagavan is consciousness, there are sparks of consciousness, part of consciousness. Then came Madhvacharya. He did not agree with that also. Says, no, the Jivatma is completely different from Paramatma. So Advaita, Vishishta Advaita and Dvaita. Non-duality, that's what Bhagavan Shankaracharya taught. Qualified non-duality, what Ramanujacharya taught. And duality, what Madhvacharya taught, and other acharyas also. So then, how do we understand that? Here recollect a very famous statement by Anjaneya, by Hanumanji. It is said that once Hanumanji or Anjaneya said to Lord Rama, when Lord Rama asked him, who are you? He says, my reply depends upon what my thought about myself is. Deha buddhya tudasoham, jiva buddhya tudam shakaha, atma buddhya tvamevaham, iti me nischita matihi. So deha buddhya, when I am identified with my body, mind, sense complex, then I am your dasa, I am your servant. You are different, I am different. The duality. Jiva buddhya, when I look upon myself as jiva, as a conscious being, then I'm part of you, you're total conscious, I'm part of consciousness, part consciousness. But when I see myself as Atma, as a consciousness, then you and I are not different. So it depends upon where you are coming from. You look upon yourself as an individual self, confined to this body, mind, sense complex. You are a part of consciousness. When you see yourself as conscious being, then you are part of consciousness. When you see your consciousness, you are one. You can say these are the different degrees of maturity. Buddha wants to say that Madhvacharya brings you to the sanctum gate, Ramanujacharya takes you to the Lord, and Shankaracharya makes you one, makes you one with it. Oh, so Vivekananda used to say, it is not false and true. It's from one truth to the higher truth. So duality we can't say it is wrong because that's what we think it is right now. When we look upon ourselves as confined to this body, then Ishvara is different. When I grow in my maturity, I realize, no, I am not the body, I am conscious being in the body, the indweller of the body. Then I am small consciousness, Ishvara is the vast consciousness, I am part of it. When my perception of myself further changes, that no consciousness cannot be part. You can't cut space. Can you make space into parts? Although one may think that the space within the part is called part space. And the space with another part is called another part space. So this part space thinks that I am a small part space and this is bigger part space and then different complexes are there. Only part space thinks I am a part of the whole space. When the part space recognizes them space, it is a recognition of your own self. It begins with duality. All worship begins with duality. And slowly grows into being part, upasana. Then ultimately grows into being one. So we can explain it this way. Depending upon what the Acharya was addressing, what they thought was most needed by the people whom they were addressing, they explained it this way. We also start with duality. Mature into Vishishtadvaita and then to Advaita. Doesn't have to be that way, but this is how it can be explained. I'm sorry that this whole topic is very serious, the question answer business, and I may seek pardon of many other people, but anyway, this fellow asked a question like that, so.
So what should one do to get closer to that truth? I mean, in practice, to bring it in, to convert it to reality?
The easiest answer is purification of the mind. Antakarana Shuddhi or purification of mind. The first step is live life in keeping with dharma or righteousness. Bring the right values and attitudes in life. That takes us very far, by the way. Because to live a life of right values and attitudes is not easy. So dharma is the first step for purification of mind. Then comes karma yoga, performing duties as in the spirit of worship of Ishvara. Then comes bhakti, where everything is done only for Ishvara, and culminates into knowledge. So these are all the stages of the purification of mind. And of course, exposure to teaching is important, but our own understanding of the teaching gets transformed as our mind also gains greater degrees of purification. So whereas we are listening to Vedanta, and which we must thinking upon that, contemplating, which is a must, but simultaneously we also should also be striving to eliminate our raga dveshas, our impulses, kama, krodha, lobha. So these are the things that in fact do not allow the knowledge to settle down. You said, how to make it the reality in our life? This kama, krodha, lobha, they become the obstacles and deprive us of the benefit of the knowledge. Everybody has listened to Vedanta, everybody has knowledge, I should say. But the benefit of the knowledge is in proportion to the purification of mind. And of course, we need to continue to study and get more and more understanding, subtler understanding, there is no question about it. But simultaneously, right values, prayers, and study of the scriptures. All this should go together. Yes, sir.
I remember, Puja Swamiji long ago had given a lecture in Purushottam. And I was trying to find my old notes to see if I could find it. But I have not found any actually texts or anything commenting on the Purushottam. Because we chant every day, it's chanted often by many priests and everything. Namani Krutva, I'm very curious.
You learn Gujarati.
Pardon?
If you learn Gujarati, you'll find a book on Purushottam.
Swamiji, it's a good opportunity for some Gujarati person to translate it. You written the books from Gujarati?
Yeah, many years ago.
Oh, is that right?
And there are talks also which we should read on Purushottam. Once we conducted classes on Purushottam also. But anyway,
Is that Namani Krutva there?
it's all right.
Yeah.
To answer specific question, Sarvane Rupane Vichitya Dhiraha Namani Krutva Abhivadan Yadaste. Here the process of creation is described in the Purushottam. Sarvane Rupane Vichitya Dhiraha. Dhiraha, the wise, the omniscient Lord. Rupane Vichitya, having created all the forms, Namani Krutva, assigned names to them. What is the universe consists of all the various objects, sentient, insentient. Every entity can be described by name and form. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever there is, has a name and a form. Name is called Nama, form is called Rupa. Sarvani, Rupani, Vichitya Dhiraha. The omniscient Lord, having created all the forms, Nama, then gave names. Abhivadan Yadasta. He himself now proclaims himself with Devdattoham, I am Devdatta. Vishnu Mitra, etc., etc. He himself is doing that. Having created this form now, he declares himself with different names. He himself has assumed all the names. He himself has identified with all the forms and has assumed all the different names. Now proclaims, I am so and so. But the translations are there of Purusukta. Oh yes. I'm sure in Ashavidya itself we can find, if we...
I didn't find Swamiji's talks on that. Very old one. But, maybe I'll dig into it deeper if you think of it.
Neeraj was saying something?
So Swami has
Yeah, you can announce.
Yeah, so we have made an app for Swami. It's called Swami Viditatmananda. So it's available on the Android right now, which has Purushottam lectures. For eight lectures are available. Okay, so people can download. Thanks to Karthik, he uploaded it. So iOS app will be coming soon. It's there, but it's in a testing phase right now. But Android app is fully available right now. It's called Swami. You type Swami Viditatmananda.
And since Purushottam is is chanted by every priest in any prayer, I would strongly suggest that everybody download that lectures.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hari Om Swamiji. Swamiji, just a practical challenge with, so during guided meditations, it sometimes becomes easy to stop all thoughts and focus on that one real vastu. And in fact, if the focus is on that vastu, the thoughts stop. The challenge is, it even happens sometimes while listening to you, Swamiji, the Shravanam itself. And then at that time, I stop listening to you. And so that all is fine. But when that happens in everyday interaction, it's almost impossible to focus on the vastu and at the same time interact. So I don't know how to practically do it.
You are right. While we're interacting with the people, we habitually slide into the duality. I can interact with you when I assume the role of a teacher and so we assume different roles when we are interacting. So already you assume the role that you are so and so. Now if you want to focus on the vastu, then the role has to be given up. Then you cannot function. Unless you become so accomplished that you are like that actor which while playing the role remembers also the identity, his identity. That playing the role does not deviate him from the awareness of his true nature. But otherwise, when we play the roles, we become one with the role. At that time, the thought of the identity does not remain. Yes, more you remember that I am playing a role while interacting. More we are aware that this is a role. I am playing the role. I am the role player. So even if you can remember this or that I am a role player, then also you are pretty close to yourself. At least you recognize yourself as someone playing the role, not the role. That itself will be very good, that great accomplishment. In which case, you will not get totally overwhelmed or controlled by the situations. So, in the morning, remind yourself that today I'm going to play this is roles. Mind, remember these are all roles. Remember that you are a player of the role. You are an individual being assuming various forms and names and therefore roles. So even that much we can remember whenever, at least we'll be able to separate ourselves from the role and the problems of the role.
What happens is that separation takes place, and because of that then there are these awkward pauses because for example, let's say there is a lot of debate at work and something is going on, and I remember these things and I step back. I'm at peace at that time and I'm enjoying the show that is going on in the conference room. But it's of, it is not then being truthful to my role at that time. I feel almost like I'm cheating my role because now I'm at peace, but I'm not doing my dharma at that time. So I can't do.
So basic thing is while the active, play a role according to dharma. Even that is also great, that you do what is right in a given situation and not be influenced by what is convenient. That is, I think, most practical in doing our day-to-day activities. That we remember that we try to do what is right in this given situation. That's not always easy. That itself also is quite challenging, but that's a good beginning.
In the Vedanta, Raga and Dvesha are like a precise. So can one attain total devoid of Raga and Dvesha, or is the attitude that if you are attached to something or you want to avoid something, you bring it to minimum? Or is it possible that you completely are devoid of Raga?
Let us first bring it to the minimum. To completely avoid, you must know your true nature. The extent to which we come closer, to that extent, raga dveshas are avoided. First is to minimize them. Then second stage will be to become totally free from them when you are abiding in your own nature. So a wise person doesn't have raga. Dukkheshu anudvignamanaha, sukheshu vigataspruha. The situations we normally call pleasant, he does not crave for anything. What is called unpleasant, he does not regret or is not perturbed. So it is the self-knowledge which makes us completely free from raga dveshas. But we can certainly minimize them. Even by doing what is right and slowly bringing in that also remembering Ishvara. Even while doing what is right, also bring in Ishvara, that it's by His grace that I am doing this. And may this please Him or Ishvara. This itself will minimize the raga dveshas.
Swamiji,
Swamiji, what should we teach our young grandchildren who are so young, like 3-4 years old, to be good human beings and righteous human beings, and hopefully when they're adult, they should come to the path of Advaita?
Yes. To the little children, start with our Purna Vidya. There are nice stories there. According, in keeping with their age, it starts with age 6. So those stories are told and slowly values come. So stage by stage, as they grow up, so Purna Vidya is a good guide of how to teach the children. It's a very good work. Now she has a different role. Now she is grandmother, so now she is thinking. Whatever she did with her own children is a different thing, but I think they have turned out quite good. So you must have done something good, I'm sure. Yeah.
She's given up on us.
No, but that's why I say she has done a good job.
You start with, for Antakaran Shuddhi, you start with Karma Kanda, right?
Karma Yoga.
Karma Yoga, selfless act of karma for others. So when you perform that, you have a bondage, right? Bandhan, Karma Bandhan?
No. The extent to which you become selfless, to that extent the karma bandhan is less. Total selflessness, no bandhan.
So the question was like when Jnani Purush reaches to a stage when any karma he performs, she has no bondage or bandhan for the karma.
Because there is total selflessness. So extent to which our karma becomes devoid of selfishness, to that extent the bondage is less. That's the first step. To try to make our karma with minimum binding. By making them, that's why performing in the spirit of worship or seva, service.
So selfless act is the one.
Yeah, that's there are 45 pages of Rai. Please read this, by the way. 44 pages is a summary of the discussion of the... but we are giving them tonight, doesn't matter. You Gmailed them? You said? Emailed them? So everybody has this? But has anybody gone, read it? That is a good question. But now it's in a printed form also, so at least... that's a lot of work. People have done a lot of work. Okay, I think we'll let them go tonight. Okay, one last question.
Swamiji, somehow it has become that Vedanta is only for old people. Whenever we mention it to younger generation, they think, no, I'm not old enough yet. Even some of the friends, they think, but it's not old enough yet. Where did that come from? Why did it become so common? Even in India, it's very pervasive.
Particularly in India. As you said, not only Vedanta, anything that is spiritual is for old people who have nothing else to do, who are good for nothing. Who will go to listen to katha, etc., only old people go. And also who goes to listen to lecture classes, generally, you're still too young, so you have to live your life, then you go later on. People somehow feel that Bhagavad Gita or all these are meant for retired people. They do not realize that neither Arjuna was retired, nor Lord Krishna was retired. None of them was retired. They were very active. And particularly Bhagavad Gita only teaches us how to live life. Upanishads also. But Bhagavad Gita is most practical that way. So it is not been recognized that Vedanta is the science of life. It teaches how to live. If you already live, you become old, what can you do? Because in order for us to really live life properly, it needs transforming ourselves, our understanding, our values. All this need to be transformed. And that requires a certain stamina. To understand Vedanta also requires certain intellectual stamina. And to put that into practice and also requires stamina. When you only lost that as an old person, but it's not, that's a very wrong understanding in India. It comes from India. It has changed in last 40, 50 years since Bhadra Swami started teaching this Vedanta to the masses. And he made it clear to people that this is meant for living life. And thus Upanishads were all only, the teacher was confined to only a few people, and he changed that whole thing. He brought them to masses. And so it's meant for everybody. That understanding is slowly coming. But that was the wrong understanding, not understanding what they teach.
Swamiji, one quick question. Sorry, I know it's getting late. Just coming down, I read the Psalm, which is 46:10, which is written up there, be still and know that I am God. And my question is, when somebody, comes up to that level of strength to say, I am God, doesn't that person needs to first attain the adhikaritvam before he can claim in such a way?
Said, be still, that is adhikaritvam. Stillness is adhikaritvam. For the mind to become still, it must have great maturity. So antakarana shuddhi is presupposed there.
Going back to that previous response, what I was thinking when I was growing up, I had an understanding of you have to live life to really understand our scriptures. Because you have to first experience it. So how does that apply to what we just discussed earlier? Because how does one explain Vedanta to a 6-year-old? I think that 6-year-old has been through life experiences and difficulties and happiness and everything. So doesn't experience count to study the Vedanta? Because I started studying the Vedanta very late when I turned 50, maybe 45. And I felt like that was a good time to start because I had quite a bit of life experiences, leaving my own homeland, coming to the States and just into new culture. And then I went through some trauma in my life, and those were very, very good life lessons. So now, when I study the Vedanta or I listen to scholars like you and saints, things are making sense to me, things are falling in place for me. So don't you think one should live life, experience it, and then understand our scriptures?
Well, to understand something, either you go through experience or you observe and see a lot of experience are going on. People are going through various experiences. You don't have to go through it necessarily yourself. Darshana Shravanadibihi. Either you listen, you see, it's a combination of all. And so, Depends. Everybody's time comes. Maybe your time came at that time. But it's not necessarily that you have to go through lots of experiences. Even few experiences also may be enough. If somebody teaches you, they may provide an adequate background to understand.
Swamiji, that does not correlate with the Shankaracharya's arguments with the Mandana Misra and his wife. Swamiji, that brings to the question about Shankaracharya when he was discussion with the Mandana Misra and his wife, that she asked the question, do you know what is the pleasure of this alinganam or sexual thing? So then he has to, the story goes that he has to go and experience it before what it is. So that's what I think she has been referring. Experience is a prerequisite to know what it is.
Depends on what it is that you want to know. So just to trap him that he asked this question. It is not required for self-knowledge or anything like that. It is that she was trapping him, knowing very well that he is a celibate. And so I don't personally believe that story anyway.
That's the teaching taking place.
Yeah.
Teaching taking place.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Parakaya Pravesha Krute Namaha. That is one of the names of Shankaracharya. One who entered into another kaya. But I don't believe that. So we'll conclude tonight with one bhajan. I'm very happy with this participation, this is excellent. Not yet, just a minute. Let me find. Let me just locate what it is that we should chant. Chandravadana Kamalanayana Chandravadana Kamalanayana Narayana Hari Narayana Narayana Hari Narayana Yana Hari Narayana Hari Narayana Chandravadana Kamalanayana Narayana Hari Narayana Ananta Shayana Dina Sharanya Ananta Shayana Dina Sharanya Narayana Hari Narayana 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 Chandravadana Kamalanayana Narayana Hari Narayana Ananta Shayana Dina Sharanya Narayana Hari Narayana Narayana Hari Narayana Narayana Hari Narayana Chandravadana Kamalanayana Chandravadana Kamalanayana Narayana Hari Narayana Narayana Hari Narayana Ananta Shayana Dina Sharanya Ananta Shayana Dina Sharanya Narayana Hari Narayana 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 Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhaved Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om